Hey, welcome to the channel. It is late April and I'm so anxious to get up into the mountains and start wheeling, but unfortunately there's just still a ton of snow up there, so I'm continuing to work on the modifications to the Gladiator. I've been thinking a lot about how to protect the underside, and at one point I was even thinking about a full belly pan, but the more I thought about it, and that's really more than what I need, and I don't want to pay that much money, and I also don't want to add that much weight to the vehicle. So I decided to focus on the lowest, most vulnerable parts of the Gladiator. I already upgraded the diff cover in the front and the rear, and I was looking at the lower control arms, front and the rear shock mounts. So I decided to get skid plates to protect those points. I found the rock hard 4x4 skid plates. I'm gonna get them installed and see how it looks. Here's what comes in the box. On the top is the front lower control arm skid plates with new hardware. In the middle is the rear shock mount skid plates with no hardware. On the bottom is the rear lower control arm skid plates with hardware. I'll install the front skid plates first. The skid plates aren't driver or passenger side specific, but make sure to remove one control arm at a time to prevent the axle housing from rotating. This is where the lower control arm attaches to the axle. Using a 21mm and 15/16 wrench, remove the bolt connecting the lower control arm to the axle. The instructions didn't make it clear what I was supposed to do with these washers. There's one on each side. The bent tab on the skid plate should slide over the lip of the control arm mount. Hardware requires a 15/16 socket and wrench. Insert the tab shims into the skid to fill in the gap on both sides. I wasn't sure if the factory washers needed to be reinserted also. I tried to reinsert both of the factory washers, but they wouldn't fit. I removed them, but then the shims moved around, making a lot of noise. I ended up only using one of the washers, and that stopped the shims from moving. When you tighten the nut and bolt, make sure to torque it to 100 foot-pounds. Now on to the rear lower control arms. You'll need a 21mm wrench and a 15/16 wrench to remove the bolt. The skid should slide right on. This one was a little tight, so I had to use a mallet to adjust it. You'll need a 22mm socket and wrench to secure the new bolts. Now for the shock mount skids. You'll need a 21mm socket and wrench to remove the bolt. I tried several different ways to get the shock into the mount and skid, but there was just too much pressure for me to control the shock. I had to remove the rear tires so I could lower the axle and then jack up the frame. I used another jack to hold the skid in place. You're supposed to reuse the factory 21mm bolt, but the only issue is it's not long enough to go completely through the nut. I wasn't comfortable with that, but I needed to get the Gladiator put back together. If you want to pick up a longer bolt, I believe a 3.5 to 4 inch long 5/8 bolt will work. The installation is complete, so I'll talk a little bit about the product and the installation overall. The product is well made and solid, so I don't have a problem with that. The issues that I had were with the instructions and the hardware. I wish the instructions would have been a little bit more clear and maybe throwing in some pictures. But if you're watching this video, you've seen what you have to look out for, and you shouldn't have those issues yourself, hopefully. As far as the hardware, that really puzzled me as far as why they wouldn't just go ahead and throw in an appropriate length bolt and nut for the rear shock mounts. I don't know, maybe that is perfectly safe. But it definitely doesn't make you feel comfortable.
and to go through all the work to make what appear to be a quality skid plates, but to not provide that hardware seemed weird to me, because it's just going to make your customers feel uncomfortable. And matter of fact, I went through and tried to find videos to see maybe I just didn't get mine or what the issue was, and no, they just do not provide that hardware, and people are going to the store and buying longer bolts, and to have to do that seems weird. But like I said, you've seen this video, you know of that issue, and you can go out there and buy them beforehand if you want to. So I'm happy with my decision to protect the lower control arms and the shock mount. The product seems really well made. Those issues with the bolt and these instructions, those can be minor things if you're aware of them, but if you're not aware of them, they can really be frustrating. So that's something to be aware of if you do decide to go with the rock hard set. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss my next modification. I have a lot more planned getting the Gladiator ready for this season of wheeling.